And it's happening faster than the others. And, you know, you only have to look around. Like, about 2 months ago, I was in Greenland, and I was standing at the foot of a great cliff of ice, which went right up to the ice cap that covers the top of the world, and standing with Inuit elders, and hearing and seeing huge slabs of ice come crashing off and thundering down, looking at this water that emerged from the ice cliff, which before, even in summer, it never melted. Inuits had tears. Some of them hadn't been there since they were children.
The Inuits are the
Eskimos.
Yeah, the Eskimo tribe,
yeah.
right.
And they said, this is our country crying out for help. You know, so it's, I think, should, anyway, give us a sense of responsibility. We're the ones who have set ourselves up as masters over the natural world. We can change any environment to suit ourselves. So we'd better start thinking about the long-term consequences of those changes.
Well, what I found so enchanting about your book is that it's full of people like you. You call them keepers of the planet. I mean, for example, Don Merton.
Oh, I love him.
Tell me about Don Merton.
Well, Don Merton was studying, among other things, a little bird called the black robin. And he realized that the numbers were decreasing rather rapidly. And he felt quite sure it was because they were being attacked by introduced rats and cats in New Zealand. And he wanted to catch the last few and put them on an offshore island where there were no rats and cats, because, you know, they haven't evolved flight response. They don't have natural mammal predators in New Zealand. So by the time he finally convinced the bureaucracy to let him do this, there were only 27 left. When they went back to that little island in the spring, there were only 7. Of those 7, only 2 were female. Of those 2 females, only 1 was fertile, and that one had an infertile mate. Right, give up, wouldn't you? But yeah. Don didn't. And he tried something which nobody had done in those days. It's common now. Taking away the eggs, putting them with another bird to raise, hoping she'd make another nest and lay more eggs, because she swapped her mate. She took a young guy, which she'd never seen before.
Old story.
Yeah. And so anyway, so these eggs hatched. She made a second nest, more eggs. He dared to take those 2, gave them to another kind of bird, and she laid her 3rd lot. Then these ones didn't realize, obviously, that they were black robins if they were raised by another species. So he took the babies back to her and her nest and her new mate. And then this lot hatched, so he took them. And he said, she looked up at me as if to say, what next? And he said, it's all right, my love, we're going to help you. So I love the thought of these 3 biologists running around collecting worms or bugs or whatever they eat.
And what do we learn from that?
Well, what we learn is never give up. There's now more than 300. So this amazing and unique little species that Don Merton loves is now being given a second chance. So we must never give up.
And you say, I have fallen in love with black-footed ferrets.
Oh, yes.
How so? That little creature? I've seen one, I think, once when I was doing a documentary on the plains. But why in love with a ferret?
Because it's the most... I'd never seen one, but I went out with the ferret people. And we went out all night, and we saw some of these little ferrets. And in the spotlight, their eyes are emerald. And they're only about this long. They're very athletic, and they're just charming. I mean, you know how some animals are beautiful, beautifully made.
Tiny in size, you say, mighty in courage, and utterly enchanting.
They are utterly enchanting. But their life is absolutely entwined with the prairie dogs, and farmers don't like prairie dogs. So prairie dogs are being poisoned and sucked out with vacuum cleaners, and the great prairies are almost reduced because of agriculture, farming, development, and the relentless draining of the aquifers. So if you save the ferret, that means you've saved the prairie dog. That means you've saved a piece of the great prairies. It's a totally unique ecosystem. It's part of America's heritage. We shouldn't deny our great-grandchildren, who with any luck will be wiser than we, the opportunity of being in a place which nurtured their ancestors.
You exult in here that the California condor is flying again. Why does that make you happy?
because what a master of the air. Have you ever watched one in flight?
Only in the documentary.
Yeah, but they're fantastic, and they've got this huge wingspan, and they were down to 12 living birds, and they were not breeding properly in the wild. There was one in captivity. Same old fight. The biologists wanted to catch the last 12, and we're told, okay, if you catch them, you're bound to kill some. Even if you catch them, they won't breed in captivity. Even if they do breed in captivity, you won't be able to reintroduce them to the wild. And even if you do reintroduce them, they won't be able to breed successfully. So, you know, no, 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 no. However, they caught all 12 and nobody died, and they bred very nicely. Well, there's over 300 of them now. More than half are free flying. And because I like my symbols of hope, I brought to share with you this amazing... Now, you look at this feather and tell me if it wasn't worthwhile bringing back this majestic bird.
That is magnificent.
Isn't this amazing? And feel it, this power of it.
Oh, yes. And you have a right to carry this around?
I have a permit signed by, you know, that it's for educational use.
That's marvelous.
Isn't that?
So what do you think when you see one soaring?
I just think, but for this little band of people, they wouldn't be there.
There's some good news about wolves in your book, right? And I know you love red wolves.
Yes, red wolves. They were reduced to about 17, I think, individuals. And you know,
just 17?
Yeah, 17. 17.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Or even 11. It's a very small number. I can't quite remember.
Because they've for years been trapped and poisoned and
all-out genocide, actually. Let's get rid of these ghastly creatures that are endangering our cattle and so forth, which they basically don't. And so, again, this little group of dedicated wolf people, and they're amazing. I mean, they're all about them in the book, and I've met some of them. And they bred them and released them, and they're doing pretty well in North Carolina.
Yeah, I read that in your book. I read that 65 to 70% of them now wear these GPS collars so that the wolf pack, as you call the preservationists down there, can actually plot them several times a day as they move.
Yes.
And that's important to know because it shows us where civilization encroaches and crowds upon them, right?
That's right. And there's also one collar, anyway, that if necessary, the biologist can tranquilize them from a distance. There's a little mechanism in the collar. I wish they didn't have to wear collars. I actually hate it. I actually hate it.
Why?
Because it just doesn't look dignified to see an animal with a collar. And the condors have these marks on them too. But you know, hopefully, if it all works, their descendants won't have these nasty man-made. But they're only there because people love them.
Have you ever heard wolves howling in a pack?
I have, and it's magical, and they do howling safaris now. People can go out and listen to them at night.
You say in here that tourism may be a force in saving these species. How is that?
Well, first of all, because when people see with their own eyes, it changes them, they tell me. But in some cases, like Africa, where there's poverty and so forth, tourism can offer a way of bringing in foreign exchange, which can be very, very significant for a government. Like in Rwanda, the gorilla tourism is the second largest foreign exchange earner in the country. And that helped to save the gorillas during the ethnic violence, because both sides, wanting to win, wanted to make money from the gorillas. But, you know, you can destroy nature if you have too many people who love it all trampling around at the same time. I've seen it happen. So it's a very fine balance. But when people see with their eyes, something happens, you know?
Yeah, how is it that human beings can attach emotionally to animals? I just don't understand that.
Well, I suppose from the time we domesticated wolves and got ourselves dogs. And, you know, it's amazing, like, there's scientific proof now that if you're sick, a dog can actually help you to heal, and so can a cat. So there is something in this bond, and it's, again, another window into the fact that we are part of the animal kingdom.
Is there any evidence that the animals, the chimps in particular, have this, quote, spiritual awareness, this sense of other beyond themselves? They
understand the difference between me and you. That we're pretty sure. they're certainly aware of things going on around them. Over and above that, I don't know. I mean, we with our, words, and we want to question, why am I here? What's the purpose of it all? We call it a soul. So if I have a soul, and you have a soul, then I think a chimp has a soul, and my dog has a soul too.
Well, you even find mysticism in the whooping crane, right?
Well, I did, yes, when I had the opportunity going to visit those amazing young birds. They're so ancient.
In Wisconsin?
In Wisconsin with Joe Duff, the Operation Migration, and just being there with them and then flying up in the ultralight because they're being trained on a new migration route. They normally learn from their parents, and they want to create a second migration route in case the existing group gets hit by bird flu or something. So they're training them to fly from Wisconsin to Florida,